So let's kick it off. Oh, good evening, everyone. Again, I am Michelle Boyce, and I am going to be your moderator for this evening. Before we get started with the program, our normal housekeeping items. The first is that the webinar is being recorded, so that if you have to, cut out early, you will get a copy of this. Also, you're going to see in the bottom, there's going to be a chat feature. If you have any questions that come up during the presentation that you would like us to answer, please put them in there. I will do my best to man the chat and try to fill them in at the appropriate time. If it's not during the presentation, I promise we have left time at the end to answer all those questions. All right, so those are our normal housekeeping items. So it is the end of August, and this month's topic for our webinar series is Making Medicare Easy. And our feature speaker tonight is Mr. Dave Lastman. Now, when I met Dave and I was introduced to Dave, I didn't get a last name. I got, you should meet Medicare Dave, right? And I was like, Medicare Dave, that's his name? And as I've got to know Dave very well over the last year or so, he introduces himself in all scenarios as Medicare Dave. And what I've realized is that Dave's very passionate, which is why he calls himself Medicare Dave. He spends his time in his career really educating the seniors on what Medicare is about. It has a lot of unknowns out there, not unlike a lot of government programs, right? There's a lot of information, there's a lot of misinformation. So Dave and his team, their job is to help seniors, debunk the myths about Medicare, educate them to make sure that they are in the right plan for them, for not only now, but also anything that could change for their health in the future. So what I hope that you take away from tonight is that you have a resource, someone who really understands this program, and why you should be looking at your Medicare, not only when you pick it, but each year going after that. So Dave, why don't you kick us off tonight and give us our education on the different Medicare options?
All right, thank you, Michelle. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So first of all, I wanted to say thank you, Michelle, for inviting me to speak to your clients. The purpose of this seminar is to really cover some of the most important parts of Medicare, as well as the most confusing. It's really confusing by design, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. I could talk about Medicare for hours. I don't want to bore you, so I'm going to try to distill it down to some of the most important topics. Like Michelle said, if anybody has any specific questions, you can feel free to reach out to me directly. If you look at your screen, my website is seniorhealthcareteam.com. I've got a lot of Medicare tutorial videos similar to what you're going to learn in this meeting, but lengthier. So if there's anything that you miss or you want to recap or distill down a little bit more, feel free to check out some of the videos on the website. Part of what we're going to talk about is, there's an expression that I really like that says you don't know what you don't know. Most people that are entering into Medicare, and the majority of people that I talk to that are on Medicare, really don't understand what they have. So I'm gonna try to clarify some of those concepts. But number one thing is we don't want to go broke. We don't want to have to tap into our savings when we have unexpected medical needs and issues. So today we're going to cover a few things. We're going to talk about the different parts of Medicare, what they do, what they mean, what they cover. There are some gaps in the coverage that Medicare alone does not cover. We'll talk about some of the ways to cover those gaps. The two main ways are Medicare supplement plans and Medicare Advantage plans. These are commonly confused, but they're very, very different. So hopefully by the end of this webinar, you'll understand the differences between those two options. Talk about the enrollment timeline and some penalties if you don't enroll on time. I like to tell people what I do is myth bust, because all day long I'm trying to explain to people the truth about Medicare, because every time you turn on the television, you see commercials that are very misleading. You're probably also, if you're turning 65 or recently turned 65, you're probably bombarded by phone calls and by advertisements and mail. A lot of those are misleading as well. And it's confusing because there are different parts, there's penalties, there's different letters, there's different supplement plans, there's government portions, there's private portions. So we're going to drill down a little bit about who I am. The name of my company is Senior Healthcare Team. We are an independent, unbiased Medicare supplement insurance agency. We work with all the different plans, all the different carriers. I don't have a preference or loyalty to anybody. My number one goal is educating people about Medicare and helping people decide what works best for their needs and their budget. Like Michelle said, I'm very passionate about two things: music and Medicare. I got into the Medicare business when I was trying to help my mother when she was entering into Medicare and trying to help her decide what coverage was the best for her. And I was asking pretty simple questions to the people at 1-800-Medicare and Social Security and all the experts, and nobody could give me a straight answer to my simple questions. And it's got to be very overwhelming as you're entering into Medicare to not be able to get straight answers. So part of what my passion is to make understanding Medicare easy. So we want to make it easy to understand, easy to choose a plan that fits your needs and your budget. You don't try to put somebody into a plan, you try to fit the plan to the person. We want to make it easy to enroll, and most importantly, to get help and support when you need it. Again, if you have any questions, all of our services are 100% free of charge, so feel free to reach out if there's any questions. Let's talk briefly about what Medicare is, because people confuse Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare is a federal health insurance program. It's for people, mostly for people that are 65 or older. Some people can get onto Medicare under age 65 if they have certain disabilities. There are currently 10,000 people turning 65 a day. I'm going to focus mostly on what I like to call the smart Medicare model, which consists of original Medicare with a Medicare supplement plan and a prescription drug plan, which is called Part D. There are two different ways to get your coverage through Medicare. Okay. The smart Medicare model is original Medicare, which is Medicare Part A, which is your hospital insurance, Part B, which is your outpatient or your medical insurance, Part D, which stands for prescription drug coverage. You can think of D like drugs. And then a Medicare supplement plan, which is also known as Medigap. Medigap and Medicare supplement plan means the same thing. We're going to talk about that in detail. The other way to get coverage is called Medicare Advantage, which is also known as Medicare Part C. The name is kind of a misnomer because it's really not Medicare. It's a substitute for Medicare, and it's not really an advantage. I like to jokingly call it Medicare Take Advantage. We'll talk about why a little bit later in the presentation. But original Medicare allows you to choose any doctor, hospital, or medical provider in the US that accepts Medicare. And currently, as of the time of this presentation, there's over 98% of the doctors, hospitals, and providers in the country that accept Medicare. So that's essentially every doctor that you want to see. It's the most widely accepted insurance plan in the United States, wider than any employer group plan, wider than any individual plan that's out there. Some of the beauty of original Medicare: you don't need referrals to see specialists. You have national coverage, so it doesn't matter if you live in New York, New Jersey, Florida, or Albuquerque, New Mexico. Anywhere you travel to, your plan covers you the same as where you live in your home state. The coverage is guaranteed for life. As long as you pay your premium, you can never be dropped or lose your coverage. And you have the control and flexibility to change your plan any time of the year. You're not locked in at all. With the right Medicare supplement plans, you can eliminate some or all of your copays and deductibles. Okay. On the flip side, Medicare Advantage, the plans vary from county to county. There's no national coverage. That's usually county specific. Sometimes it's state specific. You usually don't have national coverage with these Medicare Advantage plans. most of them require referrals to see specialists. They also have things like prior authorization, network restrictions, meaning you can only go to doctors that accept that Medicare Advantage plan. The insurance company is in charge of approving your procedures. And what do we know about insurance companies? They're in the business of making money, not spending money. These plans typically have co-payments. You might have a small co-payment for your primary care physician, larger co-payments for specialists. The doctors can leave the plan at any time. Plans can be canceled. These plans are not guaranteed. They're one-year terms. So you can enroll in one of these plans and come to find out in January that your doctor no longer accepts it. There are also only specific times of the year where you can change your plan, so they lock you in. I want to go over a couple of terminology that I'm going to talk about a little bit in this video and make sure that everybody understands it. When I talk about co-insurance, that's when there's a percentage split between your insurance and what you're expected to pay. So when we talk about an 80-20 co-insurance, that means your insurance plan picks up 80% and you're responsible for 20% out of your pocket. When we talk about co-payments, that's a fixed cost that you pay right when you walk in the door. So you might have a $25 co-payment to see your primary care doctor. You might have a $75 co-payment to see your specialist. And then deductibles, that's what you have to spend out of your pocket before anybody starts paying. So some of your employer group plans may have $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 that you have to spend before the insurance starts to pay. All right. So I have a little exercise that I like to do, and you can do it at home with me if you want to grab a sheet of paper, keep it up vertically, and draw a line right down the center of the page, splitting it into two columns. And on the top left column, write the words Part A and hospital stays. Below that, write a dollar amount, $1,632. And then 80%/20%. And on your right-hand column, write the words Part B and everything else. And then another dollar amount, $240, 80%/20% again. All right, we're going to talk about Medicare Part A. Medicare Part A is your inpatient care. So this is what pays for your care whenever you're formally admitted into the hospital as an inpatient. It also covers skilled nursing facility care, hospice, and home health care. So on your sheet, I had you write down $1,632. What that is your Medicare Part A deductible. The way this works is every time you're admitted into the hospital as an inpatient, you're required to pay a $1,632 deductible. After that, Medicare pays 80%. You're responsible for 20%. And I'm going to show you a little bit how we can eliminate that entire deductible. Medicare Part B, I had you write down the words everything else. This is your medical insurance or your outpatient coverage. This includes things like MRIs, CAT scans, lab work, blood work, your primary care doctor, specialists. It also covers things like durable medical equipment if you needed a hospital bed or a wheelchair, or if you have sleep apnea, it would cover a CPAP machine. It covers diabetes testing strips and equipment. It basically covers everything other than inpatient care in the hospital. And Medicare Part B also has a deductible, but it is an annual deductible. It's $240. Once you've spent that out of your pocket for the year, Medicare then covers 80% of your bills and you're responsible for 20%. Now, so there are gaps in the coverage. 80% coverage is pretty good, but having 20% of an unknown number can be a huge number. So what we want to do is make sure that we put measures in place to cover that gap so that in the event of unexpected medical issues, you're not coming out of your pocket or digging into your savings. So Medicare supplement plans are designed to cover those gaps. and we'll talk about how those works. There's different types of Medicare supplement plans. There's 10 different plans. Some of them are more valuable than others. Some of them cost more, but some of them cost less. Some of them cover more, some of them cost less. So it's important to make sure you choose wisely. So as I mentioned before, there are some gaps in the coverage. All right, I'm going to put a little circle on the screen. You've got the Part A deductible. That's one of your gaps, $1,632. You've got the 20% that Medicare does not pay. You've got the $240 Medicare Part B deductible and the 20% outside of the hospital that Medicare doesn't pay. These are the 10 Medicare supplement plans for 2024. Let me go back a little bit. If you look at on the far left, we've got Medicare Supplement Plan A. It only covers the basic Medicare services, including the Medicare Part B coinsurance. But if you look at all the squares below, they're all grayed out. If we go to the right of that, Medicare Supplement Plan B is the same thing as Part A, but it adds in the Part A deductible. And then if you go to the right and you look at Medicare Supplement Plan C, it adds in skilled nursing facility coinsurance. If you look at the middle of the column, Plans F and Plan G are the two most comprehensive plans. The only difference between, and it covers everything, 100% of your medical and hospital coverage. The only difference between Plan F and Plan G is that the Plan G does not pay this $240 Part B deductible. And Plan F does. But the Plan F is not available for anybody that turned 65 or was first eligible for Medicare after January 1st of 2020. So don't worry, the best plan for most of the people who are going to be watching this is Medicare Supplement Plan G. And I'll show you how that works with Medicare. So we talked about the 1,600, well, here, I'm sorry, on your page, write down Plan G and write down 100% covered, maximum out of pocket equals $240. So here's how this works with Medicare. When you're in the hospital, you have a $1,632 deductible every time you're admitted. But you can go ahead and draw an X through that, because if you have Medicare Supplement Plan G, it will pay that $1,632 for you every time you're admitted into the hospital. Medicare will then pay 80% of the bill. The 20% that's left over, go ahead and put an X through that, because Plan G covers the extra 20%. So as long as you're an inpatient in the hospital and you've got Plan G, you're 100% covered. Let's move over to Medicare Part B. Remember the $240 Part B deductible? Go ahead and circle that. You're going to be responsible to pay that, but Medicare will pay 80% of your bills for the rest of the year after the deductible's been met, so we can put an X through that. And the 20% balance that would normally be your responsibility, go ahead and put an X through that, because Plan G covers the 20%. So the way we can think about Plan G is, as long as you have Supplement Plan G, your medical bills for the year will never be more than $240. That's your maximum out-of-pocket cost for the year. Medicare Part D, as I mentioned briefly before, is your prescription drug coverage. It's not included in Part A or Part B or the supplement. This is, you have to elect a Medicare supplement. You have to elect a prescription drug plan. It's standalone coverage. It's part of Medicare, but it's run by private insurance companies that offer the plans. In most states, there's between 20 and 28 different Medicare Part D choices. These help cover the cost of outpatient drugs. They'll lower your prescription drug costs and help protect against higher costs in the future. Very important. You must enroll in a Part D drug plan when you're first eligible for Medicare. Otherwise, you will incur a late enrollment penalty. that will stick with you for the rest of your life. So even if you're not taking any prescription drugs, you still have to choose a drug plan to avoid that penalty. Don't worry, in most parts of the country, the least expensive drug plan is as low as $0 or 50 cents per month, so that it's very negligible. The way the drug plans work is there are different phases. The premiums vary depending on where you live and which plan you choose, but they're all pretty much run the same way. There are, any drug that you're going to take, regardless of what it's used to treat, will be categorized into one of 4 different tiers. A tier 1 drug is typically a preferred generic. On most of the drug plans across the country, tier 1 drugs will cost you $0 at the pharmacy. A tier 2 drug is typically a non-preferred generic. Those drugs usually cost $3, $4, or $5, depending on your drug plan. When you get into tier 3 and tier 4 drugs, those are typically your name brand drugs. They're a little bit more costly, and they have a higher co-payment, anywhere between $11 and $40 typically. It's important that you review your prescription drug plan every year, because as we age, our prescription lists tend to change year to year. But even if your drugs don't change, the drug plans themselves do. And if you're not proactive to choose the best plan for the upcoming year, you get locked into a plan for, if you don't look at the 2025 drug plans when they come out and you just keep it the same, you might find out in January when you go to the pharmacy that the drug plan that you used to pay $3 for might be $15 or $20. So it's very important to review your plans annually.
Dave, quick question on that
Sure.
topic about the drugs. This actually came up in a conversation the other day. So let's say someone's on their employer plan, right? A private plan, and they're on a drug that it's treating them for something, but not what they're diagnosed for, right? So it's one of those, like, it's kind of testing, it does multiple things.
Mm-hmm.
When they go on to Medicare, could that be denied? Under any condition, could they say, nope, we're not going to cover that drug?
They can't do it for that specific person, but there's certain drugs that may be covered on a group plan that may not be covered on Medicare. I mean, there's thousands of drugs out there, so it's hard to say, but most drugs that are out there are covered by Medicare. But if anybody has a specific question about the specific drug, feel free to reach out and I'll research it for you. Okay, so just to recap, we've got 2 different ways how people get coverage through Medicare. We have original Medicare, Part A, Part B, Part D, and the Medicare Supplement Plan, or Medicare Advantage. So what is Medicare Advantage? Medicare Advantage is a substitute for Medicare, where you opt out of the Medicare program run by the government, and you go into a private managed care plan where the insurance company makes the rules. They decide which doctors you can or can't go to, and they don't have to cover what Medicare covers. Why would somebody want to do this? These plans are advertised very cleverly. A lot of these Medicare supplement plans do not charge a premium. You still have to pay your premium for Medicare, but people will think they call it the free plan. What do we know about life? There's nothing in life that's free. And a lot of people mistakenly confuse premium free with cost free. So just because there's no premium that you pay every month does not mean there's no cost. And a lot of these plans actually have a lot more cost when you use them than original Medicare. They typically have some of the Part A hospital benefits, some of the Part B medical benefits, some prescription drug benefits, but there's a lot of things that are left out, a lot of coverage that that is more limited, but they also sometimes entice people by giving them additional benefits like dental and vision. Some of them will give you a gym membership, and some of them will give a $50 grocery card that you can spend at the pharmacy. So people think they're getting a lot of additional benefits, When we put our common sense hats on, remember that insurance companies are in the business of making money. They're not in the business of giving things away. So they try to entice people to give up their big ticket items, their cancer coverage, their great choice of doctors and providers nationwide, in exchange for a couple of, small ticket items like some dental cleanings. And so you've got to be really careful to read the fine print and look at what you're giving up to get some of these, air quotes, additional benefits. Again, the two options to cover the gap are original Medicare or Medicare Advantage. Medicare Advantage is you're giving up your coverage that's run and protected by the federal government in exchange for a managed care plan with limited coverage, typically an HMO. Some of them are PPOs where you have a little bit more choice of providers, but still the same limitations. So I want to do a kind of a comparison of the pros and cons of original Medicare versus Medicare Advantage. Original Medicare has national coverage, where Medicare Advantage is county specific. You never have any network or restrictions with original Medicare, but Medicare Advantage, you have to stick within your network. There's no referrals needed for original Medicare. Gives you the freedom to choose your own treatment. You don't have to get prior authorizations or referrals. One of the downsides of Medicare Advantage is the insurance company decides what tests and procedures are approved for you. So I've, a lot of people that call me that say, my doctor recommended this procedure. The Medicare Advantage company will say, we don't think that procedure is medically necessary. We want you to try this procedure first, usually a much less expensive procedure. The contracts and terms are renegotiated yearly. Whereas original Medicare, your coverage is guaranteed for life. So as long as you pay your premiums, they can never drop you for life for any reason other than non-payment. So it's a little bit or a lot more stable and predictable. There's no co-payments with original Medicare and the right Medicare supplement plan. Most Medicare Advantage plans I've seen have co-payments and high out-of-pocket costs. This year, the Kaiser Family Foundation came out and had a report that said the average annual out-of-pocket cost for somebody on Medicare Advantage on the free plan was over $8,600 a year. One of the other benefits of original Medicare and Medicare supplement plan is you have the flexibility to change your plan at any time of the year. There's no lock-in periods, whereas Medicare Advantage, you can only change your plan during the annual enrollment period, October 15th through December 7th. So if you got into a plan and you don't like it, or you find out that certain doctors don't accept it, you may have to wait until next October and then apply for a Medicare supplement plan or change to another Medicare Advantage plan. So it makes it risky. As I mentioned before, the Kaiser Family Foundation, they're a leader in health policy analysis. This is that report. Average annual out-of-pocket limit for Medicare Advantage was $8,659 for both in-network and out-of-network services. About half of the Medicare Advantage enrollees would incur higher cost than Medicare beneficiaries in traditional Medicare for a 7-day hospital stay or longer. So you're either going to pay up front a little bit, or you're going to pay a lot more on the back end. The choice is yours. I put a couple, as you can tell, I'm not a big fan of Medicare Advantage. Here's a couple of articles that were recently written about Medicare Advantage. Medicare Advantage plans denied nearly 1 in 5 claims that should have been paid by traditional Medicare. This was in the USA Today. Government watchdog report found private Medicare plans rejected 18% of authorization requests and claims that traditional government-run Medicare allowed. Here's another one from the New York Times. It talks about, and you can kind of Google these on your own, you'll read the reports. Medicare Advantage plans often denied needed care, that federal report finds. There's lots of articles about this, about some of the drawbacks of Medicare Advantage. A lot of those freebies that we talked about, the gym memberships and the dental and vision. This article came out earlier this year. apparently the Medicare Advantage plans were losing a lot of money by offering these incentives, and a lot of these are going to be going away next year. And it's kind of a disservice to the people that were enticed into these plans based on having these benefits. Now they got into the plan, and now they're going to take them away. And for people that have pre-existing conditions or major, more serious medical issues, they may not be able to change to something better. So now they're kind of stuck in the Medicare Advantage tunnel without any recourse.
That's actually a question that came in. So if you choose a Medicare Advantage plan, can you go back to traditional Medicare at any time?
You can go back to traditional Medicare, but traditional Medicare without the Medicare supplement plan leaves you exposed to 20%. So going back to traditional Medicare, if you can't qualify for a Medicare supplement plan, is not the best option either. In order to qualify for a Medicare supplement plan, once you've been in Medicare Advantage, you've got to pass the medical underwriting. Every insurance company has different underwriting guidelines, but they're all similar in terms of what they will deny. If you've had any kind of cancer treatment in the last 2 years, it's going to be denied. If you've had a heart attack, stroke, any sort of more serious cardiovascular issues, it's going to be denied. COPD. But there are also things that people don't think about that would be a denial, like if you've got diabetes and high blood pressure, or if you have diabetes and complications like neuropathy. Some of the other things that get denied that people don't think about, most of the drug plans, if you have any medications prescribed by a psychiatrist, psychologist, counselor, or therapist, depression meds, but some people take these for anxiety, that's usually an instant decline. And a lot of people are taking those meds. So people might think, I'm super healthy, I can get insurance if I need it, but they might be on an antidepressant or an SSRI, and that's going to keep you from getting the coverage. So I like to hope for the best, but expect the worst. You need to get insurance when you're healthy, because when your health goes away, your options go away with that. So make sure you plan wisely and plan for the future. Don't expect that you can always change your coverage whenever you need to. What does this mean? Medicare supplement plans will help reduce your deductibles and co-payments. Let me talk about this for a second. Medicare supplement plans are standardized by the government. That means if you enroll in a Plan G, there's no difference in coverage between company A, insurance company, I'm not going to name any companies, but insurance company A versus company B versus company C. The coverage is standardized by the government. Now, each of those insurance companies can charge you however much they want for that same exact standardized plan. And there's sometimes major differences between how much one insurance company will charge you versus another, but the benefits are the same. So a lot of times people will call me and they say, well, will this insurance company, is their Plan G better than, this insurance company? It's the same benefits, but what's different is how much that company charges you and how frequently the company raises their premiums. And that's something that people overlook, but that's something that you should be focusing on when you're choosing an insurance company. Some insurance carriers seem to raise their premiums almost every single year like clockwork, and other carriers are much more stable. I don't have a crystal ball, but the best indicator for me of what an insurance company is likely to do in the near future is I go back and I look at their history of rate increases over the last 5, 10, 15 years. And that's usually a pretty good indicator of what is likely to continue. If they've only had 3 or 4 rate increases over the last decade, and you're comparing that with a company that's raised the rates every single year, probably better off choosing the one that's more stable. Medicare cost. Medicare Part A for most people is going to cost $0. As long as you paid into Social Security for 40 quarters over your lifetime, which is 10 years, you're going to get Medicare Part A premium free. Medicare Part B, the standard premium for 2024 was $174.70. Part B is based on income. and I'm going to talk about that in a moment, but you have to be enrolled in Medicare Part A and Part B, whether you choose a Medicare supplement plan or an Advantage plan. So that's required regardless. Medicare supplement plans, they vary by age, gender, zip code, tobacco use. You know, the premium in New York is a little bit different than the premiums in New Jersey, which is a little bit different than the premiums in Florida. So if you have any questions, you know, you can reach out. I can run the rates for you based on where you live. Part D, Medicare prescription drug plan, they're as low as $0 in most zip codes. So as I mentioned before, Medicare Part B is income-based. So what determines how much you pay for Part B is your modified adjusted gross income on your tax return. The standard amount is $174.70. If you look at this chart, you'll see how much you would pay based on where your income is. If you file a joint if you're married and you file your taxes jointly, as long as your income is under $206,000, you're going to pay the standard amount. For an individual, it's $103,000. There's, you know, 4 or 5 different tranches based on your income. Feel free to Google Medicare Part B IRMAA, IRMAA, and you can see this chart. And the income that they go by is your modified adjusted gross income. So that is line 11A on your 1040 plus line 2A, the tax exempt interest. When can you enroll in Medicare? The best time to enroll in a Medicare supplement plan is 6 months before the month you turn 65. You can enroll in Medicare A and B 3 months before the month you turn 65. So most people think you have to wait until 3 months, but the best time, the further away you are from your 65th birthday, the more money you'll save. So you can start the process up to 6 months before the month you turn 65. Oops, let me go back on there. And then you can enroll in Medicare 6 months after the month that you turn, 3 months after the month you turn 65 is when you can enroll in Medicare A and B. So 3 months before, 3 months after. If you are already receiving Social Security income, you'll be automatically enrolled into Medicare A and B. If you're late enrolling in Medicare Part A, there's no penalties. Medicare Part B, there is a late enrollment penalty unless you qualify for a special enrollment period. So you want to make sure that you don't incur a late enrollment penalty. Medicare Part C, the Medicare Advantage plan, and the prescription drug plan, you can only enroll between October 15th and December 7th of each year. If you miss the Part B enrollment when you were supposed to, you have to wait until the general enrollment period, which is from January 1st to March 31st. So special enrollment periods, if you're working past age 65 and you've got employer coverage and you're covered under the employer plan through active employment, then you can defer going on to Medicare until you're ready to retire, and you'll have no penalty and no delay. After retiring, you have an 8-month period from the end of the employer coverage that you can enroll into Part B with no penalty. And you have 63 days after the end of employer coverage to enroll in your drug plan without penalty.
So Dave,
Yeah.
question going back to there, if you
Sure.
will go back on that screen. So, you know, we encounter more and more individuals working past age 65, right? They hit 65, they still feel good. They're working into their late 60s, early 70s. Is there a crossover point, or is there a rule of thumb, or is it really a case-by-case basis if it makes more sense for them to stay on their group plan or to go on Medicaid?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in those situations, we want to compare the coverage that they have through their employer versus the coverage through Medicare. And we don't want to only focus on the monthly premium. We want to focus on the other out-of-pocket costs. And if the employer plan might have a, reasonable low premium, but if you've got a $3,000 deductible and you've got co-payments and network restrictions, those are real costs too. sometimes people are working, but they have a younger spouse, and the spouse is covered by the employer plan. So if the employee is going to drop off the plan and go on to Medicare, the spouse is going to lose their coverage. So in situations like that, you want to look at the whole picture and make sure we're not going to have a situation where the spouse is going to be uncovered.
Right.
All of those are case by case basis. It's a dollar and cents. If you're on an employer plan, or if you're self-employed and you're paying $2,000 a month to cover you and your wife, then it's almost a no-brainer. You go on to Medicare for a couple $100 a month and find an individual plan for the spouse. Some people are paying over $1,000 a month just for themselves.
Mhm.
So again, that's a case by case basis. And also, if you don't like your employer plan and you just want to exchange it for Medicare, you can continue working and just drop the employer coverage and go on to Medicare. And a lot of people do that. If you're working and there's more than 20 employees, you can defer going on to Medicare indefinitely. But if you're working and you're on a group plan and there's less than 20 employees, you're required to enroll in Part B, or you have a late enrollment penalty. So in that case, you're going to have to add the $174 a month on top of whatever you're paying for the employer coverage. So then you want to do a cost benefit analysis and see, what costs less. And the beauty of Medicare with the right supplement plan is your only out of pocket cost is $240, and most employer plans I've seen have deductibles in the $1,000 a year. So. Again, it's good to make sure you compare all of the costs and the benefits and look at the outline of coverage of all the options that you have. Very important, COBRA is not considered eligible coverage. So if you're covered under, for anybody that doesn't know what COBRA is, if you are covered under a group plan through employment and then your employment ends, you're allowed to continue that employer coverage for 18 months. But according to Medicare, that's not considered credible coverage. You have to be actively employed under the group plan to have a special enrollment period. So if your employment ends, make sure that you apply for Medicare within 8 months to avoid the late enrollment penalty. Retiree coverage, VA coverage, and individual health plans also do not qualify as credible coverage for Medicare. So make sure that you sign up for Medicare Part B when you're first eligible. I just touched upon this. If you have less than 20 employees where you work, you must enroll in Medicare Part B when you're first eligible. When you're actively employed, and you have more than 20 employees, your group plan is primary. That means they have to pay first. If you have less than 20 employees, Medicare is primary. That means they pay first. So if you don't enroll in Part B and you have a big medical bill, Medicare does not have to pay until your group plan doesn't have to pay until Medicare pays. And if you didn't enroll in Medicare, nobody's going to be picking up that bill. I've seen this happen more times than I'd like. So make sure that doesn't happen to you. Again, these are the Medicare supplement plans for 2024. The two best plans are F and G. The only difference is Plan G, you pay the $240 deductible directly. Plan F pays it for you, but they charge you a much higher monthly premium. If you were born before January 1st, 1955, you can still get the F plan, but in almost every part of the country, even if you can get the F plan, it's still a better value to go with the G plan, pay the deductible directly and save the money in premiums. And that is the Medicare 101. I tried to
that was
run
like a
through it as quickly as
301 course.
possible. Yeah. So I don't know if anybody has any specific questions. Feel free to open it up.
So yeah, so I covered a couple questions that came in during, but if anyone has any additional questions now, go ahead and put those in the chat. I got a hand raised. Okay. So if you're able to type your question in the chat. that, and then I can read that. I'm going to share a quick story while I give someone a chance to type in there. So before I met Dave, I wasn't, that well versed in Medicare. And I've heard him talk a lot and tell a lot of different stories and kind of, like the same concept tonight about the advantage plans not really being an advantage. Um, I realized how true that was when I had a close friend whose mother-in-law ended up going for a routine cardio visit and ended up having to get double bypass surgery. She had an advantage plan. She's in her 80s. She'd been very healthy her whole life, and now she had double bypass surgery. The plan only allowed one rehab center within like a 30-mile radius. So my friend, who's the daughter-in-law, was calling center after center to see if they would accept this type of advantage plan, and nobody did because it's very limited. So they had to put her in a rehab facility that was over 30 miles away to actually have a facility that covered it, right? And now she's stuck in that advantage plan because, as Dave said, once you have a cardio issue, you're likely not going back. So when he says you don't know until you need it, right? You have your health until you don't. So always, plan for what could happen in the future. So no questions there, just some comments, Dave. That was a lot of good information, covered a lot. I think the biggest takeaway is that no one's the same. No plan is the same. No situation is the same, right? So once you're getting close to be eligible for Medicare, you need to have the conversation with a professional like yourself who understands what someone's options are, because you could never figure it all out on your own. All right, I'm trying to, the hand keeps popping up here, but I'm not sure. There's
By the
no
way, I
question.
want to touch on something. There's a lot of times where you like your situation with your friend, where you're kind of between a rock and a hard place. There are some special enrollment periods. So if somebody's in a situation like that, they made the wrong decision, they've got a new diagnosis, you should still talk to an expert because there may be some sort of a special enrollment period. For example, if you move out of the state covered by your Medicare Advantage plan and you move to a new state, or if you move out of the service area, that entitles you to a new guaranteed issue where you can choose on any plan, including a Medicare supplement plan. So sometimes there's a kind of silver lining to that dark cloud. It's worth exploring in any situation. Don't just assume that you're, between a rock and a hard place. So just talk to an expert.
So I think I'm going to get this to work. Stuart Zander, I think you should be unmuted now to be able to ask a question. If that's
Right.
what,
Yeah.
there we go. I got it to work.
Okay. The chat was disabled. I wasn't able to
Oh,
chat anything while it was being recorded. Just a quick question regarding
Wait. Is that Stuart Zander?
Is that Mickey Rosenzweig?
Oh my God.
How are you,
How are you,
Mickey?
Stuart?
Good. I hope everybody's well there. Thanks. This has been really awesome and informative.
You
Appreciate
don't call me, you don't write me anymore. It's all about Medicare.
it. I still love you though. Quick question about prescriptions that right now we may take that are part of a copay program. So maybe we pay $5 into the program. Are we eligible once we go into Medicare for those special programs, copay programs?
Okay, I was talking about some of the great things about Medicare. This is one of the not so great things about Medicare. There's a lot of copay assistance programs for specialty meds where if you're on a commercial policy, they cover you, you might pay $5 copay. And a lot of these plans will kick you off when you go on to Medicare and you've got government insurance. It's a terrible situation. And so sometimes when you're in that situation and you're debating whether to go on to Medicare or stay on your group plan, if you have that choice, if you're taking some of these expensive specialty meds, that may be a reason to stay on the employer coverage or the commercial coverage. Now that may be changing next year. So in 2025, the Inflation Reduction Act kicks in January, where Medicare Part D, your maximum out of pocket on the drug plans is going to be capped at $2,000, and then you'll pay nothing for the rest of the year. So, you know, that might help satisfy some of those expensive specialty med situations. But as of right now, a lot of the copay assistance programs do not allow you to use them if you're on government insurance, Medicare, Medicaid.
So when we are looking into a prescription plan, we should really look at the price of those expensive specialty meds.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing to do is you talk to somebody like me, talk to an agent that's going to go through, you list out all of your prescriptions, the name of each medication, how many milligrams, how many times a day, what's your preferred pharmacy, and we can run a live report of all of the drug plans that are available, and it will kick back the least expensive option based on your drugs, and you'll be able to see exactly what the cost of each drug is, the copay at each of your pharmacies. So
Okay.
you'll know before you enroll in it exactly what it's going to cost you.
All right, and how often can you change that drug plan? Is it
You
annually?
change the drug plan once a year between October 15th and December 7th. And then you're locked in for the rest of the calendar year. So you want to make sure that you choose wisely. There are some special enrollment periods where you may be able to change your plan in the middle of the year. It's case specific.
Okay. How far?
How far in advance should you start? You're not eligible to March.
Right. So in my particular case, I become eligible for Medicare March 1st. So 6 months would be September to start the, the enrollment process. As far as the prescription plan goes, I have to wait until October to choose a plan?
Well, you'll actually have to wait until January to choose the plan that's going to start. You can enroll in the drug plan up to 3 months before the month you turn 65, but you'll be able to see all the 2025 drug plans as of October 1st. That's when they come out.
Okay.
So you'll be able to see the pricing, and you'll have an idea of exactly what it's going to cost you for the year.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Good question, Stuart. Thank you. All right, well, seems to be all the questions for tonight. Dave, we thank you for sharing your knowledge with us tonight. Very specialized topic that has a lot of information with it, and you were very crystal clear and easy to decipher. So again, we appreciate your time. We will end the webinar for tonight. We will be sending it out in a week or so for a recording that you can listen again, or for everyone that wasn't able to attend to hear the first time. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.